everybody. Welcome to She Shed Comedy Podcast. I am your host, Linda Schwartz, and today I'm with Carlen Altman here in the She Shed. And I just am so madly in love with you. I mean, I know that we've
same.
I know that we have a little bit of history together, but I kind of did a little bit of research online and stalked you a little bit.
Yikes.
And I just learned so many cool things about you.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That's so sweet.
And I'm just madly impressed by the breadth and the depth of your work and your creative energy and everything that you've done. And I'd love to just learn more about that. And I mean, you guys, like, she completely has blown me away. I honestly, I know that you're a super funny woman and you're like the funniest person I know.
Can't you tell? Just kidding. Thank you. You are, but thank you.
No, but you've done so many different projects. Like you're an actress, a director, a writer, stand-up comedian. I mean, you started in stand-up. Can you talk a little bit about that and your history with stand-up comedy and the arts?
The arts. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be in the She Shed with you. This is like my dream come true. So truly, thank you. And the feeling is mutual. You're so funny and special. And yeah, I just happy to be I'm happy to do that. But let's see. So yeah, where do I begin? I grew up in Manhattan and like kind of like a very creative background, using air quotes. My dad was a stand-up comedian and my mom's a theatrical agent who would like send people on auditions. That's how my parents met, because my dad went on an audition for something in like the 80s. I went to a high school called LaGuardia, which is like the performing arts school, which is like where Jennifer Aniston went, like all these random, Nicki Minaj went, just like, it's like a very creative high school, and I majored in visual arts there.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't really connect with it, because to be graded on creativity, I think, was really damaging for me, and it made me be like, I hate art, I hate creativity, like I really want to go to like a really preppy college, like I hate artsy people, like I hate vintage clothes, like I was just like so repulsed by creativity, because it was like so in your face, and like everyone was an individual in my high school, and so I was like, I just want to be blonde and play lacrosse, like so sick of being like artsy or whatever. And then when I guess at the end of high school, I took a stand-up comedy class through like some man, Dan Vitale, this comedian that like my dad knew. My dad hadn't his comedy heyday when he did stand-up, that was like the 70s and 80s, and it kind of like trickled, and he kind of, I don't know why I said trickled so many times, but yeah, it just kind of, he kind of stopped and, kind of just focused on playing video games in the woods of New Jersey for a long time with like little sprinkles of comedy. But I was, really influenced by his comedy career, and, my mom just being a creative person, like she does art and all these weird special things. And so I took a stand-up comedy class when I was in high school, and I remember I had to perform, at like a graduation show, and it was so beautiful it was challenging, it was so scary to perform in front of a group, but it was great because I felt like like people laughed, and I felt like I was expressing myself. And I remember like my mom wrote like one joke, which was like a weird bestiality joke, which like when I watched it recently, I was like that's not funny. Anyway, but somehow people laughed at that too. It was like about dating farm animals and animal husbandry. But anyway, it's not on YouTube, thank God. And then when I went to college, first I went to a state school of New York called Binghamton, and my friend and I had a public access show called Sunday Night Live, which was just like this horrible variety show inspired by Saturday Night Live, even though I personally have always preferred In Living Color and Mad TV. Like that's way more my sense of humor. Like the Wayans brothers and Jim Carrey. And so doing that show was really goofy, and like nobody watched it, and that made it really freeing, because we're like we
There's
can
no
do whatever we
pressure.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was really special, and just, inviting people to perform on it.
Yeah.
Like my friend and I got to meet all these special people. And but then that school, ironically, was not artsy enough for me. Like I was like the only person that like drank soy milk, or like which like isn't even artsy, but it's like basically like there were a lot of things that I think I took for granted in New York City. So then to go to a school upstate, I just was like, oh, I miss just the je ne sais quoi
Yeah.
of pretentious hipsters. So then I went to, just kidding, or I went to Oberlin College, which is, I transferred there in Ohio, which actually nobody I can think of was actually actively pretentious, even though it's listed as the #1 hipster school in the nation in this book my mom showed me called the Hipster Handbook. But anyway, you have to have bangs to get in there. Just kidding. But yeah, so I went there, and then I was on an improv group, and then yeah, I graduated college, and I did more stand up, and then I made a film with a friend that got into a few festivals called the Color Wheel.
Yeah.
And then
Let's hear about that. I mean, I feel like you've been on this really creative journey, and stand up was maybe the catalyst for all of that, and I'm sure it opened a lot of doors for you too. So yeah,
kind of, I mean, the thing is, it's like funny because I would say that for all of my, like, the 10 years after graduating college, I I spent 80% of my time sleeping or on the internet. Like, I did not hit the ground running after college. Like, I was not, like, knocking on the doors of, David Letterman or whatever. Like, I was very exhausted, which is something we can talk about at some other point. But, like, I did not have the stamina or confidence at the time to, like, or clarity. Like, I was really bad at memorizing stuff. And now I've figured that out by doing a lot of detoxes. But the point is like, stand up. I would say that in total, I've performed maybe 20 times in my life. It hasn't been a lot more. Like, I feel like when people, not to compare myself to other people, but like, I think people do it every night. People, get up there, and I was not like that. I just had agoraphobia. Like, I just like didn't like crowds, ironically. So I was like dealing with a lot, which I think, but in the times that I did perform stand up, I would say, it was really nice to be received well. Like, in terms of being invited to do things, like, a friend of mine, who I did stand up with, he was like, I think we look like brother and sister. Do you want to make a movie? Like, that's comedy, and you write your character and I'll write mine. And so we made a movie together where I play a sister and he plays a brother, called The Color Wheel, which like was funny because I wasn't really good friends with this guy, but I'm grateful that he invited me to do that. He had a lot of confidence, was like, I'm a filmmaker, let's do this. And I was very insecure for most of my life, and I was like, up until now, and I was like, yeah, okay, you're a filmmaker, yeah, let's do that. I'm just little me, like, lucky me, I got asked to do a movie. And I'm grateful that I have removed that misbelief of myself as like, oh, I'm so lucky to be a part of it. It's like, no, like, they're lucky to have me, or like, whatever, it's like. But yeah, so that opportunity happened, and then two other friends of mine, one of my friends from college and his wife at the time, like, they had a web series called High Maintenance, which is now on HBO, which is like cool. Really awesome. And so they invited me to play a character in that. And at the time, I also had a jewelry company called Jewish Rosaries, which like actually took a lot of my creative energy for like a few years, and I sold that at Urban Outfitters and some other stores, and like that was cool because I had my own business, and I was like, I don't ever have to perform, I can just sell stuff online. But I kind of just got really tired of doing stuff. Like, I just was like, I don't know, I just got exhausted. And I know now in hindsight, a lot of that was that I had heavy metal poisoning, which I think is partially due to the fact that I was working with jewelry that had like of cheap metals in it, and I didn't realize that at the time, but my ability to memorize things like stand up or acting was definitely impacted, but I didn't realize. I was like, Carlen, you're just being lazy. Wake up, get your shit together, and it's like, now that I have had a lot of help and guidance, I'm grateful that I know that it wasn't just me being lazy, that I couldn't memorize stuff, but that I actually had stuff I needed to detoxify from.
So. Totally. And speaking of detoxes. I know that you're taking a break from comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know like what your thoughts are on just taking a break from the creative work and allowing yourself. Because I know we met in a spiritual psychology class, and
Love and light, y'all.
um,
Yeah.
and and I feel like there's this big focus for you to just honor yourself right now.
Me
Tell me,
time.
yeah, tell me how what your thoughts are on that and how important that is for a creative person to just refocus that
Yeah.
creative energy.
Yeah. I mean, I I think that I spent a lot of my time after college running around trying to be a success through different mediums such as
Yeah.
acting, comedy, film,
Yeah.
jewelry, art, writing. I worked at MTV for a year. I was just trying to do everything I could to make it and feel like my life had worth. And which is sad as I say that, because I'm so grateful to know now that I am worthy regardless of anything I create. Like,
Yeah.
I'm awesome, and so are you. So is everybody on
Yeah.
this planet,
Yeah.
literally, regardless if they ever make anything just by being alive.
By virtue of their existence.
Yeah, and that it's things, our economic system and other things just force people to feel inadequate and that they have to prove something in order to gain worth or acceptance. And I'm grateful that I kind of had an awakening, a spiritual awakening, or just a general awakening of sorts, where I started to ask, wait, why am I going so full speed ahead? Like, I moved to LA because I wanted to make a TV show that I wrote and came up with called Carlen Saves the World. That was like about environmental issues. And then something inside of me was like, this is not the time. This is not the time. Even though the ego part of me was like, Carlen, this is your big break. Like, this is what you've been working for. This is what you can be like, look, this is all my hard work. It's paying off. Like, I have a show. Like, I'm doing. And just something deep inside of me was like, you just need to take a step back. And my dad had passed away a few months ago. Like I said, he was a stand-up comedian. And I think he spent a lot of his life feeling inadequate, feeling like he didn't make it, and just, living with him and feeling his sense of inadequacy just made me so sad, because he's such an incredible person. And just when I saw how, and he had success on the goal line of life in the material, like he was on all these talk shows in the 70s and 80s, and he could buy whatever he wanted, and dated women who were Playboy bunnies. Not that my mom was Playboy bunny, but it's like he had everything on this treadmill of society, and he still didn't truly love himself in a way that I think it just made me be like, oh, look, he had these things and he's still unhappy and he's still dying. I can't stop death. I can't attain immortality by making a TV show. I can't, attain worth by making something. And so I just decided to take a step back and reevaluate what my priorities were. And I was like, I really need to heal. Like I mentioned, I lived with him a few months before he passed away. I really had the intention to save his life using alternative, methods, and, watching all these woke YouTube videos about, avoiding chemo. He ended up doing chemo. But the point is like, I really tried to save him. And then my intention with making a TV show was to save the world. I really was like, oh, if I'm famous, I'll be able to save the world. Like, I'll be able to, I'll have a platform where I can, send tweets out, and then people are going to, only buy organic food, not in like a white privilege annoying way, like only buy organic food and use your tote bag and mason jar, like not like that, but just, I was like, I'm going to have influence, I'm going to control people, I'm going to control, society, I'm going to help people. But I just think that like I was ignoring the healing that I needed to do within myself, and the stepping back and questioning like, what is this all about? And luckily I really did take a real step back, and I just this whole year, I was enrolled in spiritual psychology school with you, which was one of the best decisions ever. I started going to a therapist once a week who has been so incredible. Even though I've been in therapy since I'm like age 4, because my parents got divorced then. So, but this has been the first therapist to actually help me and make me feel like, oh, you're not crazy. Like, you were just like dealing with like a really weird environment, and like you're just a really sensitive person, and it just was so validating. And also I've been doing a lot of detoxes relating to heavy metal poisoning, to having Epstein-Barr virus, and all these other things that I think a lot of people struggle with without even realizing it, because they're just not taught. And like I said, my memory was impacted, so I couldn't have even done stand-up or acting. I had such high levels of anxiety, which was connected partially to heavy metal poisoning. I mean, there's a lot of other things, you know, with me not honoring my true feelings and, you know, people pleasing and being like, yeah, whatever you want, I'm an awkward girl. You know, I think there was a lot of me that, like, wasn't in alignment with my authenticity. And I'm so grateful for this time away. And I don't even know if it's a break. Like, I'm not necessarily expecting, like, I'm back with a vengeance. Here's my, like, comedy special. Because, to be honest, like, I think that I was using comedy as a crutch, you know, to avoid horrible feelings, which aren't horrible, but uncomfortable feelings. Like, I think that I just, you know, would just be super jokey to get people to like me. And now, because it doesn't matter if people like me as much, where I'm like, oh, well then how am I going to navigate the world? And so I don't know if that's necessarily with humor as much as it was. And I don't know if I want to be like a public speaker or a nutritionist, or maybe do comedy, maybe do filmmaking, maybe make jewelry again, but like with more intention behind it, or maybe like just live in a camper van and like poop in a jar and just play the ukulele. Like, I have no idea. Like, I'm kind of having like a midlife crisis, but I'm embracing it.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many opportunities available to you, especially in the space of you know, learning about yourself and giving yourself the freedom and the space to honor that you know, break, or that space of, you know, just exploring for yourself. And I wonder if, you know, there's an underlying reason for that. And I don't know, I feel like there's just so many opportunities for learning. And what do you think are your biggest lessons right now in taking this time for yourself?
I love that question. I love you. What are the biggest lessons, or what's the biggest learning I'm having?
For taking this time for yourself.
I think just that I don't owe anyone anything. I don't have to prove myself. Like, I'm so grateful that I took this time. You know, it's not like I did nothing this year. I mean, I did like I acted in a weird music video that was very special. I, you know, did a lot of writing. I decorated a house for the first time. I took little road trips. You know, I have my pet rabbit. I made him wear a lot of degrading hats and wigs. So I've been very busy, thank you. But I think what I've learned is that there's really no right way to live. And I think that's the thing. I know a lot of people who live in LA or New York who are successful, you know, in as much as you can be in comedy, in acting, and film, and they don't have a sense of inner peace, like, because they're looking for external things to make them feel whole or satisfied or right. And I think that makes sense with our culture. I mean, it's like, buy this, you'll feel great. Do this, get this degree, do this, then you'll feel good. Die, then you'll go to heaven. Everything is this prolonged joy. And I think that the biggest lesson for me was the beautiful irony that, like, the more that I finally just was like, I just stopped prolonging joy, and I just was like, you know what, I feel good where I am right now. And I actually think that in effect is leading to more opportunities. Absolutely. If you just feel good about yourself now, then, like, people are gonna sense that vibration in you, and then, like, you know, it's like I'm being emailed to do films, like, on a weekly basis. I'm getting emailed to do, like, interview, you know, it's like, so I think that's the beautiful thing. If you just love and accept yourself now as you are, then it's likely that you will get the goal line life things that you hope for, but you can just look at them knowing that they're not going to satisfy you in the way that they didn't satisfy my dad. They haven't satisfied, like, the dozens of people that I know in New York and LA who are like, I feel like shit, like, you know, even if they have a show or if they have some kind of accolade that, you know, via Instagram looks like they have the life. It's like, no, everyone's suffering and learning
on some level,
no matter what. And so I'm just grateful because I feel like I kind of, like, escaped the Matrix, and not even though I, like, never actually watched that movie, even though I really appreciate Keanu Reeves and that movie and all the memes associated with being woke. I never finished the Matrix, but it's like I'm just kind of like, it doesn't matter what I do ever again because I'm still a worthwhile person. So that's been a big learning.
I love that. And I love what you said earlier about like, really knowing your why and having an intention rather than just moving forward without any direction, so to
Yeah.
speak. But can you talk a little bit more about that and
Yeah.
why having a why is important?
Why having a why is important? Why? What's
Why?
the deal?
How come?
Let's see. Why? Okay. I think as a society, we're always told to be busy.
Yeah.
If we weren't busy, we would start questioning things like, why don't we know how to do finances? Why don't we know how to farm? Why don't we know how to cut our own hair? Why is everything relegated to someone else? Why are we not sovereign? And why can't we take care of ourselves in the way that perhaps other generations, centuries ago we could have? Not to romanticize. I think I'm grateful to live at this time of history, with its issues. It's great. Like, there's so much to do. But I think asking why is important, because if you don't, you're just potentially fulfilling somebody else's dream. You're fulfilling, the prescribed life that's being offered by the media or education. Like, go to school, get a job in something that you're okay with sitting at for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year in America. It's like, but it's like, if you ask why, you can kind of get out of that, I mean, and some people, that's fine, like I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's like I had a lot of exhaustion and anxiety for a big part of my life, and I think that forced me to ask why, because I didn't have the stamina to even ever really live like a normal life. Like, even when I worked at MTV, my boss let me work 3 days a week because he was like, you get tired, you do what you need to do, and I'm so grateful for that kind of leniency. But I think because I didn't have a lot of energy for most of my life up until now, or in recent times, like, I had to ask why, because I was like, wait, why? Like, how does the world work? I'm not part of this world. I, like, don't have the energy to do all these things, and it forced me to ask why. But I think that asking why is so important, because then it gives you just the freedom to explore what you truly want. And that is, I think, the purpose of life. I think when we are called to do things, rather, when we're like, wait, why do I want to do this? Oh, because I'm called to do it, or because society or some kind of condition set it out for me to do this, and I don't actually want to do it. If you ask, well, why do I want to do this? I just have a joy to it. I think, like, you should just follow your joy, because that is, whether you're religious or not, it's like that hunch that something is right will lead to greater success than if you just follow the prescribed thing.
Absolutely. I thoroughly agree with that. Cool. And
I
thoroughly subscribe to that. Cool. Also, and I appreciate everything that you're saying. And also, what really is coming forward for me is this idea that if we just open ourselves up to the inquiry of, just asking. I think a lot of times there is that conditioning where there's this prescribed idea of how we do have to live, and yet we don't ever question. There's always this assumption that this is how life should be because everybody else is doing it, and there has to take some sort of internal inquiry to really allow yourself the opportunity to figure out your own life and your own path. Absolutely. And I totally appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you said it very nicely. Yeah.
I know. My heart.
Mi corazón. For those who speak Spanish. I don't.
So you mentioned living in a van or a camper.
Oh yeah, and pooping in a jar, which I don't know why I mentioned that. That's part of my fantasy. Yeah.
I've also had the same fantasy of just kind of leaving society, and I mean, I've always wanted to write a book called Life on the Edge of Society.
I love that title. By the domain.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, seriously.
But no, there was a point in time in my life where, like you were mentioning earlier and saying earlier, that we really don't have, like, we give up power and agency to all of these external forces, and we don't even question why we do that. And like you said, we don't even know how to grow our own food, and we relegate all of those things for the sake of convenience, to outside forces, when we have just by virtue of our existence, we have this innate ability to really be sovereign being. We are sovereign beings.
Yeah.
And I mean, I moved up to the mountains. I was so close to like just flying under the radar. I feel like I there were moments in my life where I just felt so free from, you know, the system. And I would love to hear your thoughts on what that means to you and why living in a camper van and pooping in a jar is so appealing.
Oh, can't wait. Yeah, I think, and I love that you walk the walk, you poop the poop. I mean, the fact that you live in the mountains is really awesome, and I appreciate that. I think for me, because I grew up in Manhattan, you know, in the heart of it all, in the dump of, I mean, it's great, but you know, it's, I very much love the idea of living somewhere that's the total opposite of that. A few months ago, I ended up going to Bali by myself for 2 months, and I lived in a tiny hut on the ocean in a beautiful ashram, and I just took it very easy. I'm very thankful for that experience, and I was just like, I don't have to live in a city at all. Like, I feel so much more grounded and connected to creativity. I felt more creative in such a natural environment, and then I knew I was only going to be there for a little bit, and then when I went back to LA, I kind of did a mental comparison. How do I feel? And being in that really, quiet, peaceful environment, I just felt so good. And in LA, I've learned to navigate, being a part of society, getting coffee latte at a place every day, and buying protein bars and buying celery juice at the expensive organic cafe. It's like I've learned to not be sovereign. I've learned to live this kind of not pampered existence, but very much so compared to most of the world. And I just love the idea of doing whatever it is that my heart desires on a momentary basis, and I just feel like the idea of living in a van is so cool, or just living in a tiny house is so cool. Just doing something where you can just wake up and just go take a walk in nature and like talk to a toad or do whatever you want to do. And then, I would love to learn how to grow my own food or be part of, a food collective, where a bunch of people grow their own food, so I don't have to be a farming expert, but I can just help and have a sense of community.
Absolutely.
But I think what I realized too is that I was sort of thinking about it in black and white for a lot of the time. Like, I was like, I either have to live in New York or LA, or I have to live in a van. And, live in LA and be a part of this matrix, or live in a van and like have all these grow dreadlock pubic hair or whatever, people, I mean, not to generalize, but like live the other way. And I think the beautiful thing too is that I'm realizing like there is a way for me to have a sense of grounding and nature and community here in LA if I want to.
Absolutely.
I don't have to escape, but I do really want to try out living in a van. Like, I'm new to driving, and I just think like I really want to rent either some kind of cool van like a Westfalia, even though they have horrible gas mileage, or just anything. Like, I just want to explore America and possibly parts of Spain and Germany and just try it out. And so my intention this year is to go on some kind of epic road trip.
That
and
sounds amazing.
Poop in it, or pee. Girls don't poop, but everyone knows that. But pee in a jar. So yeah,
I love that. So what's really coming forward for me is this idea of living simply.
Yes.
And having simplicity. And I'm a big fan of minimalism. I think, when I also spent some time in Bali.
So cool.
I woke up one day and decided that I was going to quit my job. I bought a one-way ticket to Bali, sold everything, and I really simplified my life, and that was probably one of the most satisfying things that I've ever done for myself.
Yeah.
And I hear that, like in your life right now, there's this sense of adventure that's brewing,
and that I'm not wasting time. I think that's what it is. I think that I felt a lot of guilt for wanting to wander. I was like, oh, that's a waste of my time. I should be working on comedy or acting or blah, blah, blah. Me traveling, oh, that's just like an annoying trust fund kid who has no aspirations, who, it's like, no, if, like I said earlier, if something is calling to you, that's like a hunch in the right direction. Absolutely. And I think that if I feel this way with the expectation that no one place is going to like make me happy, it's not like I'm going to get to, like I was thinking about going to Nevada City, California, which is one of the one cities that tries to curb Wi-Fi radiation, and they curb geoengineering, chemtrails, which we can talk about. But I just was curious to go to this kind of environment, and just, but it's like, oh, is that a waste of my time? Why am I going? But it's like, I just want to try it out, and like, who knows what will happen there, or wherever I want to go. It's nothing is a waste of my time because I'm worthwhile, and Absolutely. So are you. It's like, and I just feel really blessed to have this mindset. It's taken me years to peel away the guilt and shame of wanting to travel or wanting to do things that are
fulfilling.
And this whole year of like, my year off or detox has been the best year ever. Had I not done that, I could have made a TV show, I could have done comedy, I could have kept, on this like treadmill of creativity, but it's like I would have been basing my worth and my success and self-love on whether people liked it, on whether how many Instagram likes like I got, how many people read my articles or whatever, and it's like, I'm so grateful I don't ever have to do that again, so I can just do what I want, and so can you, and so can you, and everyone can just do what they want, and because we're all going to die and it doesn't matter. Good night. Thank you.
Well, since you brought it up, let's talk about chemtrails.
Okay.
So the floor is yours.
The floor is yours. The government is listening. What do you want? Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
So why is I know that in what is important to you also, at least from what I read on the interwebs, is environmental activism. So please educate us on chemtrails and what the impact is on the environment and who's doing it, who's behind it. Tell us everything.
I wish I knew. I have a very open mind, and I think I'm open to all perspectives, which I think is a blessing more than a curse, because I don't know what is true or not. I only know what feels true. I'm open to being wrong. I hope I'm wrong in a lot of ways, because I do have a lot of conspiratorial views that I would much prefer were just me being crazy. That would be great. I've been very passionate about environmental issues. In high school, I started an environmental club. I studied environmental science in college. My show was going to be about environmental stuff. When I worked at MTV, I did a lot of content about climate change. And I just, this has been a huge driving force for me, because I'm like, how do we live on a planet that we're polluting? This is our planet. Why? What's going on? Like, if we all live here, even no matter how rich you are, you're still being affected by climate change. You're still being affected by pollution. You're still being affected by dirty water. Why is it business as usual? Like, are people that drunk or Prozac'd out that they don't notice? I'm like, what is going on? So and that was what partially led me to studying spiritual psychology, because I'm like, if I can't save the world from the outside, like, I want to go inside and save my inner world,
Absolutely.
And that's not to say that I gave up on saving the outside world, but I think that I just sort of, wasn't basing my sense of on whether I saved the world, on whether the environment was clean, on whether Monsanto, was arrested, which they were yesterday. I don't know if you saw, but
no, I didn't.
Monsanto had to pay like over, I think, $280 million to a man that got cancer connected with, using Monsanto Roundup pesticide.
Wow.
So, but again, I'm open to the possibility that Monsanto is a great company and they're doing the best that they can. I'm really open to, sincerely, like, I want to think that that's true, but, when my dad gets cancer and, when there's such high rates of cancer, it's hard for me to just think that all these companies have the best motives, but I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, sincerely. And then you asked about chemtrails. I think that, I studied so much about climate change, and like I mentioned earlier, I found out that I had heavy metal poisoning, which, anybody can get a blood test and check their hair and see, oh, I have high levels of aluminum, I have high levels of mercury, I have, and I did that blood test and I learned that I did, and I Googled, where could I get high levels of aluminum? Like, trying to figure out, is this because I grew up in New York? Is this because I make jewelry? Is this, what is this? And then I started to read about the possibility that a technique to curb climate change was by spraying aerosols into the environment, into the sky, to make the sky cooler.
Oh, wow.
And so what I read was that one of the main ingredients was aluminum, because aluminum acts as like a coolant.
Yeah.
And that this was a possibility in, you know, why a lot of people have Alzheimer's, why a lot of people, you know, all these health issues are connected to aluminum. There's like a big theory that, you know, a lot of deodorants can cause, or they're linked, sorry, not cause, but they're linked to, I can't remember. Clearly I'm using too much deodorant, even though I smell horrible. But no, I think that, you know, deodorants are linked to Alzheimer's, because they have high contents of aluminum. That's just a theory, but this kind of just intuitively resonated with me, and so I just started Googling, sources of aluminum. And then there's this theory called chemtrails, which is that, you know, planes are spraying this, you know, these white lines in the sky. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of very open-minded people who think that it's crazy and it's all a coincidence when you see white lines in the sky, that those are just natural planes, you know, flying over from your natural airport, you know. But I'm open to that, but I'm also open to there being something, you know, more complex than that.
Absolutely.
And, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the government is behind it, for sure.
Okay. And why would they do that?
Well, so I think that there's this level of mind control happening. Like if if you're spraying these chemtrails and it's being absorbed into the environment and into our bodies, that they have a higher chance and opportunity to really keep us, in a state of reliance and dependent. I think the government has issues with codependency, and it's like being in an abusive relationship, right? Like they'll do anything to keep you in that
you mean
mindset.
In terms of making you sick,
or in terms of like making you sick, and also if you're compliant, if you're in a space of like this codependence on the government or whatever, then there's this idea that that they can control you with the media, and I have some conspiratorial views also.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing and being honest. I think that's the great thing, is that I think that people, no matter what your views are, I think we're living at a time where people do feel a lot more comfortable sharing views. I would say that I've had a lot of conspiratorial views, and I've intentionally like been a bit inactive on social media because I'm still kind of feeling out what I believe, but and I do think a lot of people, like I love Kanye West. I love him. I think he's really inspiring, and he just speaks his mind. But I think that people label him as crazy and that he supports slavery, which if you listen to the full interview where he made this comment about slavery, being a choice, it's a lot more complex than him just saying that. Like what he's talking about is that like, or at least from my understanding, that people are choosing to
mental slavery.
Mental slavery. And it's funny because I feel like in a way, like to my close friends, I'm like, I love Kanye West, like I want to meet him, like maybe I'll buy like Yeezy shoes or like whatever. Not that I need to do that, but because I'm worthwhile without Yeezy shoes, and so are you. But I think like, it's like in a way I've been like, oh, if I post that I love him, people will think I'm like weirdly racist, or they'll think I'm ignorant, or that, I feel like I've been sort of like, I think that not everyone is ready to hear things. Absolutely. And that people who would become defensive potentially against thoughts like chemtrails, like Kanye West is great, like Donald Trump is great, like all these other things, it's not necessarily, it's because they're not ready to hear it. Their consciousness isn't ready to hear it. It doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make me right. It's like,
totally, yeah.
And so, but I'm grateful.
It's just information out there.
Exactly. And I am so grateful to know people like you and a lot of other people I know who are willing to talk about things that, are outside of the mainstream narrative. Yeah. I don't know if that was an Alex Jones voice, but whatever. I'm just very thankful to you. And comedy is truth. I mean, the whole point of comedy is, in my opinion, to share truth in a digestible, thought-provoking way. Totally. And if you don't figure out what your truth is, you're doing yourself and your comedy a disservice. So even, you know, whatever it is you feel, it's like, it's really great to just even be honest about that too. I think that's the thing. It's one thing to know your audience, but it's also another thing to just completely self-censor. And if you're like, oh, I don't want to believe in chemtrails, or I don't want to believe in, you know, vaccines being shady, or whatever it is that, you know, might not be popular with, you know, the watering hole at your cubicle or whatever. Not you, you know, but like, you know, it's like if you're just censoring yourself because you want to be liked, you're doing your comedy a disservice, you're doing your soul a disservice.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I thoroughly agree with that. And speaking the truth in comedy, you're named after George Carlin, whom I think is probably one of the most prolific comedians. Woke. Yeah, he's so woke. I love him so much, and like just the brand of his comedy is really speaking the truth. I mean, a lot of people would say that maybe perhaps it's like anti-government or whatever, but it totally resonates with, like, you know, conspiratorial comedy.
Right.
But
right.
so share with us about that. Like,
sure. Well, it's funny because my dad tells people I was named after George Carlin.
Okay.
But then my mom's like, no, it's just like a cool Irish name, even though I'm not Irish. Yeah. And it means like little champion, which anyway, but then
I love that.
Me too. But and it's spelled differently, like Carlin is I-N, I'm E-N. Yeah. But yeah, my dad was actually in an improv group with just George Carlin and Richard Pryor in the 70s. Wow. And my dad's like, if they would have listened to me, they'd be where I am. And he said that like while playing video games, like eating Cheetos in a retirement community. But I mean, anyway, that's a whole other story. But you know, he like, yeah, it's like he loved George Carlin and Richard Pryor so much, and so yeah, he would say that I was named after him. But I don't know for sure if it's true. But and it's funny because honestly, I didn't really appreciate George Carlin until recent years. Like when I would watch stuff on YouTube and where he would talk about like the planet doesn't need saving. Like the planet's gonna be fine. Humans are the ones that are gonna be screwed. You know, it's like he has some really cool. He's awesome. Yeah, so, I think he's great.
Way before, I mean, he's an inspiration to me. I love his stuff.
Me too. I mean, that's the thing though that does frustrate me though, is like I feel like with comedy, people will watch stuff and be like, yeah, he's speaking to me, like F the government, F society, F, you know, cubicle life or whatever. But then they go back to the norm, and that's something like I feel like with the Daily Show, it's like like Jon Stewart's right, I'm a great smart liberal, Republicans are dumb, let me just go back to my life. And you know, it's like I would love if there is a way to combine actual activism and comedy, where it's not just like, I agree with you, you're validating my truth, but I'm not going to do anything. And so that is kind of that was the intention of my show, Carlen Saves the World, is to like figure out like
how to marry those two things.
Like actual real activism. But then I think the thing is, because I'm still kind of navigating what I believe, you know, while also knowing that what's right for me isn't necessarily right for, I mean, clean water, clean air is right for everyone. Everybody
deserves that,
even the reptilians. But you know, it's like I also don't, it's like I'm trying to figure that out. But I think that's the thing. It's like with George Carlin, I'm like, all right, now what? And that's not an insult to him. It's just more like, if comedy and the art form of comedy is to like bring the truth, it's like, all right, now what do we do with the truth? And I think it's much easier to just be, you know, a social media activist and be like, I hate Trump, or I hate this, and you know, or like, but not actually do anything, not change your life, not recycle, not carpool, not talk to your neighbor, not do anything that would raise the vibration in your own life. I think people just kind of,
I think they love the idea of it. But the practice of it can be
challenging.
It's something else,
Yeah. But I'm grateful that I'm trying to figure that stuff out, and you are too. And who knows what's next?
Who knows? But we are coming up to the top of our time together.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I just want to say I'm so honored and so grateful that you decided to come down all the way from LA.
Yes, I took a train, Amtrak. What up?
And thank you so much again. Oh, and before we go, I wanted to do this at the beginning of the show, but I totally forgot.
I'm excited.
So I love these intuitive wisdom cards.
They're beautiful, whatever they are.
So, go ahead.
And
center yourself within yourself. Okay. And then pick a card. Any card. Okay. Do you have a card?
Yes.
Okay. Open your eyes. And I'm going to pick a card too.
Okay.
And then we can look at it together.
I'm excited.
And then share our feelings, thoughts, insights, wisdoms.
Okay.
About whatever comes forward.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Mine is be gentle.
Mine is spirit wishes.
Ooh!
Thank you, spirit wishes.
So, what does your spirit wish for?
Is that the way I read it?
I don't know.
Spirit wishes.
Yeah, spirit wishes.
Well, there's a pelican.
I think it's a
pelicans.
dot.
Oh, spirit wishes that.
Is it like who knows?
Spirit wishes that? We got season 2 of Shisha. No, I don't know. Spirit wish. Wait, you do yours first.
Okay, so mine is be gentle, and I don't know if I'm sure the imagery is supposed to invoke something. I lost the booklet that came with it,
right?
So I know
budget show.
They don't mean anything really, but to be gentle, yes. This is so. It's so true. I feel like I've been really, really hard on myself, especially these last couple of days. I got into a car accident the other day. Got into a tiff with a good friend, which I never do. And I've really just not been honoring my emotions and what's been coming forward, and been really hard on getting everything right, doing everything right, making sure that the sound is right on the audio on this podcast, and just really
the dog's turned off.
Yeah, the dog is turned off, and when he's turned on, that I am not being aggravated,
right,
or being aggravated, but
right,
not taking it out on him,
right.
So just the act of being gentle with myself.
That's beautiful. Yes. Spirit wishes.
This one is hard. This one's challenging.
I mean, it's hard without the booklet, but again, it's up to me to be the meaning maker of this and life and everything. So, spirit wishes that we are all authentic and that we express our truths, whatever they are, while knowing that it's okay if nobody gets it, as long as we get it. I feel like you inviting me to be a guest on the show is really beautiful, because I met you in a very non-comedic environment of being in school, and I was just being my authentic weird self, which is a little bit jokey, a little bit sincere, a little bit conspiratorial, a little bit not, a little bit, it's I don't have to brand myself or prove myself in any one which way, and you're still inviting me into this dream she shed. So I think spirit wishes that we would all be authentic. Absolutely. And then you too can be a guest on the She Shed.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well, you heard it here first.
No pressure. Yeah. Step up your game. Just kidding. You're wonderful as you are.
Well, thank you again. And with that, you guys, we're going to wrap this show. Watch us here on the website at, what's my website? sheshedcomedy.com. Cool. Follow us on the social medias, and download this podcast on the iTunes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.